Good morning. Welcome to today's SP Live. I'm Susan Howes. I'm Vice President of Engineering at Subsurface Consultants and Associates. We're involved in consultancy for the upstream oil and gas industry. We do training, we do recruiting and staffing. And I was also involved at the start of what is now known as the Committee for SPE for Business Management and Leadership. I was a charter member of what was formerly known as the Soft Skills Council. And it's through the work of the BML committee that we bring this to you today. So we are delighted to bring you today's SP Live on the topic of virtual and you, how to maximize success in your next energy job hunt. So first, I want to introduce our speakers. I'm going to tell you, you can share your comments in the chat that's on your screen. At the end of the day, we will have time to ask some of your questions. So use either the chat boxes in LinkedIn or in YouTube. And as we get to those topics, we'll have a chance to bring them up. First, I'd like to introduce Amanda Rico. Amanda is a resume and editorial specialist with Rico Editorial, and she specializes in optimizing resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles for senior executive level professionals. She's a contributor to the Houston Business Journal and Oil Woman magazine, and she got her PhD in English from Texas A&M and master's and BA in English from the University of Oklahoma. Welcome, Amanda. Next, I'd like to introduce Dan Seeley. He's Managing Director of Element 6 Recruitment, and he specializes in delivering high-level recruitment strategies across the energy sector. He works with private office-funded startups all the way up to super major energy companies, and he has worked with candidates in over 50 countries, so lots of multicultural experience there. He works to ensure the cultural motivation and operational alignment with companies and potential employees. And he helps to market the candidates' transferable skills to other industries, a pivot example. And then our third panelist today is Pauline Greenwich. She is founder and principal of Upward HR, and she's a people strategist and workplace consultant in Alberta, Canada. So we're coming from 3 different countries today. She assures employee alignment, collaboration, and engagement to create stronger and measurable business results. She has written a book entitled The Grand Dinner Party, Setting the Table for Employee Engagement Through Mergers and Acquisitions. I know a lot of us are dealing with M&A these days. And she has designations as a chartered professional in HR in Canada. She's also been involved in the Grizzly Council and its mandate to promote the transferability, social and economic value of displaced oil and gas professionals. And she also works with Alberta's Anti-Racism Advisory Council. Welcome, Pauline.
Thank you.
Welcome to all of our panelists today. We're so pleased to have you. And we have a number of topics to talk about today. You know, since the pandemic, we have really been in lockdown mode, and people are continuing to conduct their careers, and some of them are trying to change jobs. And so we'd like to get some strategies for you about that virtual job hunt. How does one manage it? And so I'm going to start with you, Pauline. What's the most effective approach to transitioning to a virtual job hunt?
Well, I think the key, thank you so much, Susan. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. I think one of the most important things for a virtual search is really just preparation and having things in place. I kind of call it your toolkit. So in addition to things like a resume, cover letter, being able to be visible on platforms like a LinkedIn or other virtual networking places is really important. Also ensuring that you have things like your references are important as well, because the idea is to connect, but then to be able to have conversations from any of those virtual platforms that you're going to be visible on. So having a few key items ready in advance is going to allow you to then be visible on virtual.
Excellent. Amanda, I know you specialize in resumes. Do we still need CVs and resumes? Is that still
Yeah.
a valuable part?
What are you talking about? Yeah, of course we do. We gotta have them, but they're only part of the toolkit, right? So they're only one section, just like what Pauline was saying. They're only one part of what's going to get you a job or what's going to land you an opportunity. So it's important to think through what those other elements are. And like what Pauline said, develop a strategy. So you have to have a very set idea of where your target's going to be. And I say this, I harp on this all the time on LinkedIn whenever I post. Everything has to be laser focused, right? So for someone who's shooting for business development, sales, engineering, if you have a resume for all of those things, you're not going to get any of those targets hit. So you have to make sure that you have your materials curated in such a way that it's going to make sense to the employer reading the material that you're the perfect fit for that role. Not just a kind of maybe so-so fit, or, you know, oh, maybe they'll go in this pile, you know, they're not going to get called in for an interview, but maybe we'll pick it up later. You don't want to be in that pile, right? That's job search purgatory. So you want to be selected in their top qualified candidates. So that's where the materials come in, but that's also where networking comes in. So I'm sure that Pauline and Dan will say the same thing, that you got to network, guys. Got to do it. It's 100%. LinkedIn is your best option. In our virtual world right now, if you're not on LinkedIn, if you don't have a built out profile, if you're not, you know, connecting and chatting with other people on LinkedIn, you're missing out on a huge, huge opportunity.
Excellent. So Dan, let's talk about a little from the European perspective. What's the difference between a CV and a resume, and when do you need each of them?
They are two separate documents, should be treated as two separate documents. So a CV is a general document detailing your qualifications, your academics. A resume is specific and should be tailored specifically to a job that you're applying for. And think of a resume like a picture that you're trying to paint of your skills, your experience, your qualifications. So they are two separate documents and they have two separate purposes.
Thank you. And do you see any differences in different countries as you're working with candidates and clients around the world about which they would expect to receive?
I think in general, both are acceptable. I think in North America, I've seen more of a focus on resumes rather than CVs for job applications, less so in other parts of the world. And I'd say certainly where I am in Europe, the two are pretty interchangeable and becoming more interchangeable.
Great. Pauline, how about in Canada? What are you seeing? I was talking to a candidate yesterday who said, is 2 pages too long for my resume? What do you think about the length?
Well, when I work with folks who are in career transition, we are really focused here on concise resume. So if it's a career search that you're conducting, it really is resume. If the candidates we're working with have an academic bent or they're using it for those purposes, publishing and so on, then that's okay. What's interesting, to further to Dan's point, is in Canada, at least, we sometimes use those terms interchangeably. However, so we'll say, do I need to provide a CV or resume? But mostly what we're looking for is a concise 2-page resume for job search.
Excellent. Dan, I think this question is for you from Dara. Should you send the CV and resume together in Europe?
It would certainly not do any harm. I think that in general, information that's on your CV would probably be on your resume as well. Like I said, a CV is about your academic qualifications, and in general, that would be a section of a resume.
So there's overlap, but they would certainly be complementary. Yeah. Excellent. So Amanda, let's talk a little bit more about the role of your digital profile. You mentioned LinkedIn. Should your LinkedIn be the same as your resume?
It should be complementary, right? So there are a lot of times whenever I'm really trying to hone in on someone who's a career changer, and I want to make sure that I list as many specializations as possible of what they've done so that we build in keywords so that they can come up high in searches. But I also want to be mindful of the fact that they don't look like they're all over the place, right? So it's a delicate balance. So usually, working with people in oil, gas, and energy, I want to make sure that, let's say they've been in you know, a completions engineer and they want to shift to being an operations engineer outside in like Amazon or something. Then in their about and summary section, what I may do is make sure that they have a section that says oil, gas, and energy expertise. And then I list that out. And then under that, I'll say, you know, other industry expertise or something like that. That's a bit more broad, so that anybody reading that profile will know that, okay, they have expertise in these specific technical regions, but they also have transferable skills that are going to make them a great fit. And that way you don't look like you're lying. It doesn't look like you're trying to mask or hide what you've done. What you're doing is you're leveraging the skills that you have, and you're allowing yourself to come up high in searches for something outside of what you may have done before, which, you know, for someone who is, say, a completions engineer, there's going to be tons of technical jargon that's not going to make sense to someone at Amazon. So it's going to be a really fine balance of making sure that your profile is built out in a way that makes sense for what you've done, while also being true to where you want to be, right? And in that case, I generally make sure that I have as much experience as possible on the LinkedIn profile so that you do come up high in searches, while also being mindful of the fact that we don't have to include dates on every single thing, right? If someone got their degree in the 80s, I don't need to put that they graduated with their master's in 1989, right? All someone needs to know is that they have the degree. Right. Exactly, that you have it. So we also want to be mindful of other weird little tweaks in the hiring space that may go into giving too much information. And so just making everything look fresh, updated, but also comprehensive on your profile is good. Excellent.
Pauline, I'm going to direct this one to you because I know the privacy laws in Canada are unique. And this is from Musab. Is it recommended to include your personal photo in the CV?
Yeah, this is a great question, Susan. And in our jurisdiction, it's an absolute no-no. And and we often have people coming from other countries or who have been, you know, working in other countries where it would be the opposite. You must add a picture. But in our particular jurisdiction here, we would absolutely not have a picture. We wouldn't put marital status. We wouldn't put age. These are things that are protected, what we call protected grounds here. So we wouldn't want an employer to make a selection based on any of those criteria. It really is about what you're offering in terms of skills and ability, education. So that may be different in your area, and you know, if you're watching this, but certainly in ours, it would be a no-no.
Excellent.
Same in the U.S.
Amanda, I'm going to bring Katie's question to you. She's in the U.S. Any LinkedIn advice on seeking fill in the blank for the current position if you're in the job hunt? So would you put that in your brand?
Yeah, no, definitely. So you want to make sure, you know, one thing I see a lot is that people put in their headline, seeking new opportunities. That tells someone nothing, right? About what, right? What are you seeking? So what I always suggest is making sure that as much as possible that you have details about what you're seeking built into 3 main sections, right? And those main sections are your headline, right? So you want to have basically the goal of your career target, right? You want to put that in there. So if you're pursuing an operations manager position, operations manager goes in that headline somewhere, right? Because that's going to get picked up in searches. In your about and summary section, you want to make sure that you're highlighting your best qualifications for that target role. You also want to make sure that you have listed that you are open to opportunities so that if someone has Recruiter Lite, that they can find you there. But also, just to make sure you have enough content, if you are on the job hunt, I always suggest that you create a new work entry in your work experience that says operations engineer - actively job seeking during COVID-19. And then you have your qualifications in that section, right? So you have if you're open to relocation, you have what regions you're open to, right? You have your qualifications, all built into a work history, because that allows people to find you easier as well. So I think I said 3, that's actually 4. So as many locations as possible, because I see this all the time, if you only have the open to work function on, that's only available to people who have access to Recruiter Lite on LinkedIn. And that's a pretty expensive function. So you just want to be mindful of the fact that you have enough content built into your profile that you come up in those searches.
Excellent. So Dan, this question's from Mayak. When do you send across the cover letter, and how important is a cover letter if one is sending a resume or CV?
Okay, I think the best way to explain it is your cover letter is like your 30-second elevator pitch. It's, this is why I'm great for this particular job. And I think it gives you an opportunity to almost, I don't want to say sell yourself because it cheapens it a little bit, but it gives you an opportunity to point out why you're a great fit for that particular job. It will always strengthen an application that you're making to demonstrate that you are really targeting that job with that particular company. It makes a lot of difference, and it really personalizes your application.
It shows you read the job description.
Exactly.
Excellent. Pauline, here's a multicultural question. How do I get around, this is from Johanna, how do I get around the impact of having a foreign name or last name to avoid bias?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, I'm of the philosophy that you just step into it. You know, we are who we are, and we appreciate, because I do work with many clients who have names that are from all over the world. And the key thing is really to just enhance your experience, make sure that people know that you have the experience that matches the role. So, for example, one way to position yourself really is in that if you have a profile statement on top of your resume, talk about your you know, what you're seeking and what you're offering, but also some of the strengths. I think that's the simplest way to do it. And also they're going to be looking at your experience. Is it based in that area where you came from? So I've worked with people who have experience from other countries. A lot of recruiters are looking for the you know, localized experience, right? If that's possible. And if it's not, it's not. But I wouldn't ever want to say you should change or do anything about your name, because it's who you are. So I think you should proclaim that. And in terms of specifics on the resume, it's just really focusing on the education, the experience, but also some of your strengths. I think that really adds some more robustness to your overall application. And to Dan's point, you really use the cover letter in that case. Always, you should, but it's especially important so people can get a little bit more sense of who you are. And a cover letter is a great free way to do it.
Excellent. Dan, I think this question is for you because it relates to the energy transition. This is from Zieden. Which area is more prospective to get a job in the oil sector? Is it renewable energy, or is it in the traditional oil and gas industry?
It's the oil and gas industry has been buoyant for a number of years, and it's gone through dips, and it's always been seen as sort of a boom bust cycle. The renewable energy space is growing daily at the moment, and it's an exciting space to be, but it is still in its, I don't want to say its infancy, but certainly not as far down the line as in the oil and gas space. I feel at the moment there's a lot of opportunity for people to step into the renewable energy industry who haven't worked in that industry before, and they are open to bringing people in who have transferable skills and who can bring a different perspective on the challenges that they're going to face, because a lot of people haven't worked in the industry before, and they have to find the right skills from somewhere to be able to push projects forward.
Amanda, we have had a number of people in the United States get vaccinated for COVID-19 now, and it's available to all adults. Should you put fully vaccinated for COVID-19 on your resume?
Ooh, you know, I think that I might toss that one to Pauline, because that seems like a real intense
HR question. Pauline,
I don't feel qualified for here.
Yeah, no.
I don't think that's ethical to be adding that, though. What do you think?
I think, Amanda, you're on the right track. And I would suggest, again, it's really about your local health authority and also, what's required, and it's sort of a place where we're trying to figure out the rules, but I would not include that on an application or in a resume. It's personal information, and it's something, at least here, we would not ever be able to ask about. And so I think that, yeah, it's related to health and so on. And so at this point, it wouldn't add any value. If you're thinking sort of pragmatically, it doesn't add any value to put that there. That I'm speaking though from this jurisdiction. I'm not sure internationally if there are requirements to proclaim that. Then of course you would want to take that into consideration as well.
I know in the US we have HIPAA laws, so I would not suggest doing it, you guys.
Yeah, we can't do that here either.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Marisa. What should I do if there's something about my resume that is not getting the target employers, even if I've used all the best practices?
Yeah, so I guess I'll grab that one. All right, so what it probably means is that you need to be very, very focused in on that combination of targeting your resume to the job description and reaching out, right? Going on LinkedIn, finding a first or second level connection who could potentially get your resume in the hands of that hiring manager or the department head of where you're going to be located. Right. So more than likely what's happening is that your resume just isn't necessarily going into the yes pile for whatever reason. So you really, really have to focus in on the basic qualifications for the positions and make sure that you cover those as quickly as possible in the resume. And I say this a lot, that, those basic qualifications on a job description are like the blueprint for figuring out how to get traction in a job. As much as you can target as possible, the better. And I totally understand if you may not have 100% of the qualifications, but trying to meet as many as possible and just laser focus in, especially in the top portion of the resume, on those qualifications, that should get you traction. And then also networking to try to get your resume in the hands of someone will also get you traction. I've used this a lot, and I've suggested it to a lot of people, and once they realize, oh yeah, I knew someone who's at the company, maybe I'll just ask them, hey, I applied for this job. Do you know what's going on there? And I'm telling you, consistently people get traction once they start reaching out.
Referrals are important. Absolutely. Yep. Dan, here's a question about the transition of traditional upstream jobs from honey towards the data science and IT sector. How can we grow in the IT sector related to oil and gas?
Wow. Okay, that's kind of out of my area of expertise a little bit, but I'll try. I think that there's oil and gas professionals. So many of them have really great transferable skills, and you just have to look past what is it I'm doing on a day-to-day basis into what can I actually do. So someone may be, I don't know, a reservoir or petroleum engineer by background, and that's what they've always done, but the skills that they use on a day-to-day basis is much more. It's much wider than that. What they do is they analyze data and manage the risk involved with certain data to come up with expectations of an outcome and quite creative problem solving. So might not particularly be specified into IT, but the key is to look past just what your job description says you do into what sort of wider skills you bring.
So Pauline, here's a question from Eileen. Having experience in the oil and gas industry, how do you suggest making the transition to renewables, as some jobs in renewables require the specific experience? And there's a similar question from Katie. She's running into a similar challenge transitioning to environmental projects. How do you make these transitions without the experience?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's one that comes up a lot in the clients that I work with who are moving through career transition. And I think it tags on to Dan's point, where it's really highlighting the transferable skills. And so you say, well, what does that mean, Pauline? Well, what it means is really getting clear on doing some homework about renewable. So if you're let's say you're reservoir, if you've done a lot of project management, You've done a lot of project coordination. You have some good analysis skills. You've pulled together people to do work, even if it wasn't on a project. These are things that can transfer. And so you want to understand the connection points, because someone who's recruiting for those types of roles is really going to want to see how your experience lines up. They won't be able to intuit it, and they may not want to put the effort into trying to figure it out. So you can help them figure it out by actually being very specific about analysis, whether it's data work, project management, even business development, if that has been part of your role as an engineer. In petroleum, in any of the aspects of that. So that would be one thing. The other thing you can do is information interview, and where you can talk to someone in renewable. You're not asking them for a job, but you have 5 or 6 key questions, either about their role, about that industry, or that company in that industry. And, you can take 30 minutes. LinkedIn is a great way to reach out. You could even send them the questions in advance if they don't have time to engage with you virtually. But it allows you to kind of get some information without, and also be visible to that person. So that would be a suggestion I would make.
Excellent. Here's a question from Ifeyewina. I've read job descriptions that I almost match, but I do not get a response after applying. In some cases, I've even contacted those working in the organization. Is there something I still need to do to up my chances? Amanda, how about that one for you?
Yeah, sure. Right. So, I mean, it really is about trying to make sure that you're figuring out a strategy for specific job roles, right? So I see this a lot where, I'll hear that somebody applied for a role that they're, really, really perfect for. But whenever they reach out, and if they do get traction, they find out that for some reason that they didn't get through the process because they didn't have a bachelor's that was requested or required, right? Something like that. There can be certain things that you may be missing that are make or break for a recruiter or for an HR pro, right? So kind of bear those things in mind. Those basic qualifications sometimes are hard and fast, okay, where you're going to have to meet them legally in order for you to be qualified for that job. So in that case, if you're reaching out to people, consistency is key, right? So I hear a lot, oh, but I reached out and I just didn't hear back. You got to find a way to keep reaching out, right? Once a week is a really good, kind of rule of thumb.
Not once a day.
Not once a day. No, please don't do that. People are not going to respond. You're going to get blacklisted. But no, once a week with a very personable, genuine kind of outreach, checking in, following up, and then doing your best to maneuver through your first and second level LinkedIn connections to that company. Preferably, someone who has worked in that specific role or something like that. Just like what Pauline mentioned, informational interviews, where you're not reaching out to get a job, you're reaching out to connect and to find out what someone does in a day in that kind of role. That applies even if you're not career transitioning. That applies across the board, right? It's like taking someone out.
Reciprocity, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You're both giving something to the relationship. Here's a question from Joa. How does one overcome the experience barrier and get a first job in the industry in these challenging times when most companies are looking for experienced professionals? Pauline, how about you?
Yeah, this is something that is so relevant for our young EITs here, or for people who are looking for that first opportunity. I think when, some of the external factors we don't have control over, whether it's the pandemic or a market downturn, but I think one of the things you can consider doing is really highlighting the skills or expertise that you can offer. So working with younger folks who are just stepping into this career, I would suggest that what are the things that you're really good at from either your work, if you did a co-op or if you've done some other experience. So for example, if you were an intern or you had an opportunity through your program at school, you could talk about, here's the skills that I offer for coordinating on projects. Here are the reports that I had to pull together. Here's how I helped with supply chain on this project. it could be something really granular where you're detailing, these are the skills I can offer you. And it might be a 3-month contract. It might be a 6-week piece of work, but you want to just be able to really highlight what are those detailed things that you can offer. If there isn't a proper entry opportunity just yet, you may say, I'm available to help with these things, and be specific what they are. That may be one thing that you can do. And again, visibility, really using LinkedIn to have conversations, whether it's an information interview or just reaching out and saying, I'd like some advice and guidance. I'm between my accreditation for getting my PNG, or I'm just looking for that first opportunity. Do you have any ideas of who I could speak to as I progress or proceed or think about doing that work? So those are a couple ideas that are really kind of timely right now.
Excellent. The same strategies that experienced job seekers would pursue. You're just
It's
looking
not that
for
different.
qualified.
It's not that different. The challenge is just when you just want a chance, you just need someone to give you a chance. Sometimes you have to just offer up, these are the things that I can do, right? And it might be even just helping clean up maps or something, right?
Right.
Something that's not exciting and what you've trained for, but it's allowing someone to see you and do
entry-level role.
Something that allows people to see that you have more to offer, and putting one foot in front of the other.
Thank you, Pauline. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. So I really want to thank my panelists. You've done a great job, Pauline Greenwich, Amanda Rico, Dan Saleh. We've really learned a lot about how to do job search during the pandemic. And I speak for all my viewers when we thank you for sharing your thoughts and strategies and experience on the SP Live.